There we go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Greater Life, Greater Impact. I hope you're having an amazing day like I am. Today, the topic is the law of non-resistance, and I'm getting this information from, I've just kind of compiled or summarized some of the information from one of my most favorite books ever. You might want to go get it. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. Just type it into Google and do a search, and you can find the PDF version of it. I actually printed mine out. I have it in a binder. It's old. Trying to think when it was written. Written by Florence Scovel Shinn. She was born in 1871, died in 1940. So a woman before her time, for sure. Anyway, that's we're taking principles from chapter 4 of that book today. So if you don't have it, here, let me type it into the chat. It's The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. You can go do a Google search. You can actually even find audio copies of this book, so you can just listen to the audio recording. Anyways, you go do your homework. You can find it. But today we're going to be talking about the law of non-resistance from that book. And hold on, let me do some muting. There we go. I'm going to be talking about concepts from that book. We have already been covering some of the concepts from this book from time to time as we go through this year's course on manifesting miracles. For those of you who are new, we've also been using some of the principles from this book, A Course in Miracles. It does not have an author, but a great book nonetheless. We're going to talk about more of those principles in future classes. But for today, we're going to be talking about manifesting abundance and manifesting the desires of your heart. I personally believe that this is a wonderful creative process when you join hands with the divine and seek to create goodness in the world. God will bless you for that. So one of the first principles that comes out of this chapter 4 in The Game of Life and How to Play It is that nothing on earth can resist an absolutely non-resistant person. Nothing can resist a non-resistant person. What does that mean? Let's talk about that for just a minute. When you're in a state of non-resistance, you're not clamping down, you're not holding fast, you're not holding tight to something. You're open, you're expansive, and you're allowing for flow to happen. Something that she brings out in this chapter is that the Chinese believed that water was probably the most powerful element on the earth because it perfectly manifested non-resistance. So water is not, it doesn't clamp down, but it is a powerful force. And when you look at how water can wear away and erode rock and stone, and how it can, look at the devastation that floods can create. Water is a powerful element for sure, but it does not resist. It goes with the flow. So that is the principle, the law, the concept that I want to talk about today. And then we're going to go into a bit of a meditation towards the end. You guys are going to come up with some of your own affirmations, things that you desire, that you would like to maybe start to create in your life. And then we're going to put you in a state where you can do that. Okay, still admitting people to the class. Hold on one second. There we go. All right. If you remember from our past class last week, we talked about how there are not really two forces, good and evil. There is only good. There is only light. Anything other than that is outside of the bounds of good and light and truth and love is a facade. It's a false narrative. And so evil does not have power in and of itself. It can only seek to mimic, and it mirrors and reflects the good to some degree, but not entirely. And so this is kind of an important concept to bring into the law of non-resistance, because once you understand the law of non-resistance, you realize there is only one truth. There is only one power. There is only one way, and that is light. There's an old legend that Adam and Eve ate of Maya, and that is Maya is the tree of illusion, meaning that when they ate of the tree of Maya, it split their consciousness in two and caused them to believe in dark and light, good and evil, two powers instead of one power. So many ancient traditions, ancient philosophies, and religions do believe that before coming into a mortal probation, we only had awareness of one power. We didn't see things through duality. We saw things as in a state of oneness and wholeness and completeness. So there was no illusion. There was no deception. There was no needing to mirror or put up false identities or false truths or bear false witness. So at some point in our existence, and we may return back to this point of consciousness, focusing in only on the one power that there really is, not two. So she says, therefore, evil is a false law man has made for himself through psychoma or soul sleep. And so when people begin to wake up spiritually, they cast off those false illusions. They start to wake up and they start to recognize truth more clearly. They start to see things from a much more clear vantage point rather than from illusion, from deep sleep. And so oftentimes we say people who are not spiritually awake are in a state of unconsciousness. They're unconscious to things that are real or things that are spiritually designed. So evil is a false law that man has made for himself through psychoma or soul sleep. Soul sleep means that man's soul has been hypnotized by the race belief of sin, sickness, death, etc. This is a carnal or mortal thought, and his affairs have outpictured his illusions. So the sick man pictures sickness. The rich man pictures wealth and abundance. The poor man pictures poverty. And so that which you hold in your mind's eye and think about often and then have feelings about is what you are projecting out. This is the concept that we learned last week in the law of abundance and attraction. That which you send out will always come back to you. So your body, your bank account, your relationships, your external world is constantly mirroring and reflecting back to you that which you have thought about, that which you have pondered on, that which you have had feelings about, strong feelings. And so where your thoughts and your feelings reside the most often is what you're going to start to create in your external world. In the chapter, she also talks about, well, then why do little children get born with illness? Why do young children have these kinds of problems? And her answer in the chapter was, well, children are extremely sensitive. And oftentimes children can inherit and pick up the sensitivities or the thoughts and belief patterns and emotional patterns of their parents and grandparents, even before they're born into their physical bodies. Okay, somebody says, can you type the name of the author of the book, The Game of Life and How to Play It? Yes. Oh, thanks, Emily, for doing that. Appreciate it. She talks about how she heard a metaphysician or an energy healer, energy practitioner say one time, if you do not run your subconscious mind yourself, then others will run it for you. And what that means is, if you're oblivious, unconscious, asleep in that state of slumber spiritually, then other people's patterns and programs and behaviors have power over you to influence you and to control you. Do you see what's happening in the world today with control? People who want control are using things like fear and guilt and shaming. They're using some of these low, heavy, dense energies and emotions and feelings and programming to gain control over the minds and the hearts and the free will of human beings. But see, if you're in a higher elevated state and you've chosen and opted into that higher elevated state, they have no power over you. There is nothing that fear can do to you and for you, because you've opted into a different state of reality. So another illustration that she gives in here is oftentimes mothers will do this to their children. Mothers will project onto their children, kind of in a similar way to the way that people who want greater power on this planet are projecting onto people. But a mother who is in a state of fear that their child will get sick will often project. She'll frame her wording and her thoughts and her feelings and her expressions based on what she's fearing the most. And so the example that was given in the chapter was when a young mother was asked if their child had gotten the chicken pox, the mother answered, "Not yet." So do you see how in her mind she's thinking, it's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen. Thank heavens it hasn't happened yet, but I know that it's coming. So if that's, do you see how she's projecting her fears onto that child? And a lot of times what we have to overcome in our adult lives is the effects of what was projected onto us when we were children by our parents who were fearful. So do you see how it gets passed on? But the irony, it's not irony, but the truth, I guess, is once you receive it, once it's been passed to you and you pick it up and run with it and receive it, now it's yours. And we don't get to blame our past. We don't get to blame our family line. You picked it up and received it. And so now it's on you to process that and do what you're going to do with it. She also talks about a man who is centered and established in right thinking, that man who sends out only goodwill to his fellow men and who is without fear cannot be touched or influenced by the negative thoughts or fears of others. Think about that and think about how that applies to you in the world that we live in today, where so many in high places are trying to project fear onto you. If you're centered, you're powerful. If you're centered and intentional about the state of consciousness that you choose to operate in and come from, that you cannot be influenced by the negative thoughts and fears of others. I injected that. So the law of non-resistance then. So let's everybody do this, if you will, just so that you can experience it and feel it, but take two fists and press them together. And what happens when you resist against each other? Press, 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 resist, resist, resist. Like nothing goes anywhere, right? There's no flow. There's just resistance. Nothing can be manifest into your life that you are seeking and desiring to create or manifest if there is no flow. Think about the water. Think about the principle of the power that water has because it's non-resistant. Okay. So what happens as you're pressing your two hands, your fists together? There's one force pressing in against another force. And because the two forces are opposing each other, nothing goes anywhere. Nothing happens. It's just resistance, right? It's just clamping down. So it's a recipe for suffering. If you resist life, if you resist others, if you resist what comes to you in this life by divine design, you are going to set yourself up for suffering. It's a perfect recipe for it. So what happens when one of the powers or one of the forces releases and lets go? Now there's flow, right? Now things can move. And now the two forces are no longer battling against each other. She made a really great quote in this chapter where she talked about your enemies and people that throw up darts and daggers against you to fight against you. And we've all experienced that. Likely all of us will to some degree in our lives. But she says, when you're in a state of non-resistance, then, and just you put yourself intentionally into a place of love, then their arrows, their daggers, whatever it is that they're projecting onto you has no more power. In fact, she says, bless your enemy and you rob him of his ammunition. Think about that. Bless your enemy, love them, and you rob them of their ammunition. His arrows will be transmuted into blessings. And I want to move into that concept because I think this is a profound concept when dealing with those in this world who are seeking to resist you and to oppose you. There was another really interesting story by a guy who had been a pastor or a preacher, and he talked about how he used to baptize children. And then he says, now I no longer baptize children. I baptize events, but I give every event the same name. He says, if I have a failure, I baptize its success in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. So what he's doing is putting himself into a state of renewal, rebirth. Baptism is rebirth. It's changing the old stagnant way and bringing it into a new state. So if you want to take upon you that concept of baptism and rebirth and renewal, you can apply that to almost every situation in your life. When you have failure, when you have opposition, when you have problems and challenges that are constantly being thrown at you like fiery darts, and you instead change those fiery darts in your mind, take them and change them into blessings and project love towards those who are casting the stones and casting the fiery darts, you not only dismantle the ammunition that's being used against you, but you empower yourself to receive greater blessings from God. Melissa says, the resistance you talk about reminds me of a scripture I read this week, Alma 34:38. Contend no more against the Holy Ghost, but that ye receive it. If we aren't contending or resisting, the opposite is flowing in the love of Christ, right? Contend. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for that insight. That is perfectly said. So if we apply this to creating abundance and manifesting miracles in our lives, if you want to manifest miracles, then there has to be, number one, there has to be flow. And number two, the pathway that things flow, the medium through which things flow is love. That's the medium. Love and abundance and gratitude and richness. God is rich in the abundance of gratitude and joy and love and truth. And he's not ashamed of abundance. He's not ashamed to flow in abundance. There's no shame or guilt there God has all of the resources and all of the wealth and all of the riches of this planet at his fingertips, at his disposal, and he can use it for his good. And so can you. When you make yourself available to align with the highest will of God, now you flow in it too. And there's no shame in that. Abundance and wealth is not bad unless you make those possessions your idols. If you put those things before your covenant with God, then yeah, they can curse you. But if you keep them in the proper perspective and seek to flow into the flow of abundance in a state of non-resistance, not only will it bless your life, but it will open you up to being a blessing to others. If you didn't have resources, if you didn't have wealth, if you didn't have things, food, clothing, shelter, and an abundance of those things, then how would you provide? How would you help and serve and lift others around you? So it's all based in our intention. It has nothing to do with riches being bad or wealth being bad. It's all about your intention. What are you going to do with that stuff? Megan says, I had an experience in meditation this morning that I think applies to this concept. I see why this was important now. Could I share? Yes, please do. This is the perfect segue. Go ahead, take it away, Megan. Just go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to.
Okay. All right. Well, I just was in meditation this morning before class. And so I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I think everybody here will understand. So I had this vision of this man in who I was close to in the premortal life. And I realized I had a love and a connection to him. But in that realm, he decided not to follow Christ and he chose Satan and he became a leader and in his army. And I realized that in some of my resistance that I've had to my mission here on and purpose, I have been kind of battling him kind of in my different situations in the short story. But I realized that in my battle that I'm putting up a resistance, like, right, fighting. I'm always fighting and fighting the darkness, fighting the opposition and resisting. So today in the vision, me and my army, I have a team of angels that I work with when I do my work and my healing. Me and my angels approached him and his army. And as I approached them, I had so much love for him. And I just had the feeling that we just needed to lay down our weapons and we just need to basically surrender and call for peace and just call on the light and the love of the Savior to protect us from now on, because I feel like my mission is shifting into a state of not just fighting and resisting, but calling on love and healing and in that state of not resisting anymore and just surrendering and trusting that we're going to be safe and protected, we'll be able to heal each other and ourselves and we won't have to resist. So I just feel like it was a beautiful illustration to me of what you're talking about today, is that we all feel like we're fighting these battles and we're doing it and we're maybe feel like we're doing it on our own, but when we put down the weapons and we call on that light and that love to protect us and surround us, and we stand in that place knowing that we're safe and that we're able to do this with that divine support, that is when we step into flow, and that's when we step into our power and our gifts and our abilities and are able to do those things that we were called to do here. So I just really appreciate this like perfect divine timing to help me understand more what that vision meant to me. So thank you for this class.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. That leads perfectly into the next concept, and like you just perfectly illustrated this concept of non-resistance. When there's two forces battling against one another, and one lays down their weapons, the war is over. There is no more fight. There's nothing to bump up against anymore. I want to add. I want to kind of piggyback onto your story. I don't know. Well, she's not in this class today, but she comes to this class regularly. She's a good friend of mine. I'm not going to name her by name, but she shared with me a vision that she had. And in the vision, she was ascending a staircase. And she got to the first landing of the staircase where it was supposed to turn and go up a different direction. And on that landing, she met face to face with Lucifer. And Lucifer had these boxing gloves on, and he wanted to fight her, and he was trying to engage the fight with her, trying to engage that resistance, right? This battle. And she's like, I'm not afraid of you. And so she stands up and stands in posture, in her power posture. And she's like, bring it on. I'll fight you. I'm not scared of you. And he hands her the boxing gloves. And as she's about to put the boxing gloves on in this dream or vision, she hears, whoa, 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 whoa. And it's the Lord. He's standing right beside her. And she's like, oh, hey, hi. And he says, I see you're about to engage in a fight. And she's like, yep. And he's like, would you like me to show you how we do it? And she's like, sure. And he's like, take the gloves off, put them down. And then he stood between her and the adversary, the darkness, and just said, I love you. I love you. I love you. Like just authentically and meaning it. Um, and that ended the war. It just disappeared. The darkness went away. The adversary slithered and went away. And I have never forgotten that story, that experience. And I understand that that is a powerful tactic of not just battling the darkness, but making it irrelevant. Because the truth is, there really is only one power, and that is light. That is truth.